This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. On the first episode of the new weekly show SmackDown on August 26th, Triple H is going to beat The Rock to retain the world title when guest referee Shawn Michaels is going to super kick The Rock, allowing Triple H to get the win. And after this, we saw the unlikely team of Rock and Mankind form, and they end up becoming known as the Rock and Sock Connection. And on the August 30th Raw, they win the World Tag Team titles from Undertaker and Big Show. But before we talk about Rock and Sock, I want to talk about The Rock and Shawn Michaels. This has become a legendary story through a series of shoot interviews. And I think Rock's own dad, Rocky Johnson, told a little bit of a story of how once upon a time, Shawn Michaels and The Rock didn't exactly see eye to eye backstage, maybe over some political wrangling, if you believe the rumor and innuendo. Do you remember there being any sort of disagreement or agreeing to disagree between the two?
They didn't like each other.
Why do you think that is?
Ego, just they're especially, back then, completely different people.
Right.
So it was, I don't think that Shawn saw a whole lot in Rock at the time, and Rock didn't really like Shawn. So it was just oil and water at the time. They did not mesh. Some people just didn't like each other.
It's worth exploring further some other time. Let's talk about Rock and Sock. I don't know that there's a bigger utility player, maybe in the history of wrestling, maybe Bobby Heenan, but God, whatever you need Mick Foley to do, he's in it and he's going to make it work. We just tried this with 2 years prior with Steve Austin. It was Steve Austin and Dude Love. And now here we are doing the same thing again with the Rock and Sock Connection. Whose idea is this? All Russo's creative? And do both of the guys love it right away? I assume they've got whatever sort of hurt feelings there was in January patched up by this point.
I don't know 100%. I think it was Mick Foley's idea, or, the German Mick's idea to say, hey, what if, and kind of it's very similar to what we did with Steve and Mick way back when, and the Mankind thing. But this was something that was going to hopefully have a little bit longer shelf life. And both guys, that they had a chemistry. They had shown that they had a chemistry working against each other. So the Rock and Sock Connection became, here's the other side of that coin. These two guys had chemistry and made magic together, whether they were against one another or working with each other. Always highly entertaining and always ready to step up to the plate.
Pretty remarkable that this hit as well as it did. We should mention, even though they won the titles on the 30th, they're going to lose them on September 7th on SmackDown in a buried alive match. Back to Undertaker and Big Show. Triple H is going to interfere. By the way, if you haven't already, check it out on YouTube. Mick Foley on the Inside the Ropes channel tells a hilarious story about the very first buried alive match, and how, while the pay-per-view went off with the lightning strike from the scoreboard and the Undertaker's hand coming up from the grave, that is how the pay-per-view ended, but the show didn't end. They kept other matches for the live crowd, which is just hysterical. You've got to go see Mick Foley tell that story. I laughed out loud this week watching it on YouTube. So shout out to Foley and friend of the show, from Inside the Ropes, our main man. Come on. On the September 20th Raw, the Rock and Sock Connection won the titles back in a Dark Side Rules match against Big Show, Viscera, and Mideon. 3 days later on SmackDown, what do you know? The New Age Outlaws have reunited, and they beat Rock and Mankind to win the tag titles.
Thank God.
Well, at least he got the win back, right?
Well, he's back where he belonged.
A few days later, on the September 27th Raw, Foley and Rock do the famous, or maybe it's infamous, "This Is Your Life" segment. And this is the famous segment where they call out a series of people from the Rock's past. Mick Foley's got it all arranged. They've got a 6th grade teacher. They're going to call her Mrs. Griffith. On the graphic, they call her Mrs. Schubert. They say she's the home ec teacher, but on the graphic, she's an English teacher. And the Rock was getting back at her because she never let him make pancakes. Then they bring out a coach. Rock is mad at him because he made the Rock run laps, all because he gave an opposing player a DDT. Then they bring out his high school sweetheart who never let Rock get any of that poontang pie. That's just real. And then Mankind pulls a sock with Rock's face out and calls it Mr. Rocco Socko, and brought out jackets for him as Rock to dress as the Rock and Sock Connection. And then finally they bring out the woman from the clown skit the prior year when Vince McMahon was in the hospital.
Yerple.
And Foley gets mad at Rock for insulting the clown lady. And he hits her with the "It doesn't matter what your name is." Then they bring out a birthday cake and Rock says, "Wait a minute, my birthday's in May." And then Triple H comes out with a sledgehammer, and that brings things to an end. And it is a merciful end, because let me tell you, even though this is an 8.4 rating, you heard me right, an 8.4 rating, which is the highest rated segment ever in Raw history up to this point, an 8.4. This segment goes 14 minutes. I think everyone agrees it went too long. This was not good. And I know that people, still look back at this with rose colored glasses. Go watch this tomorrow. This was not good. It just goes on and on and on, and you're waiting for something big to happen, and it kind of never really does. What'd you think of the segment? And when did you know? I'm sure you hated this. Actually, you were probably on headsets timing the show and thought it was going way too fucking long.
I've never watched it since I watched it live that night. I was so pissed off. And
you pissed off at The Rock, or you pissed off at Foley, or everybody?
I was pissed off at Russo. I was pissed off at Rock. I was pissed off at Foley. I was pissed off at anybody that was standing in front of me. It went, dude, I don't, it went more than 14 minutes. I think it went 14 minutes heavy.
Oh, right.
Over its allotted time.
Yes. Yeah. So, my apologies. You're right. You had a planned allotted time. It went 14 minutes longer than it should have. So think about that. You've got all these different segments that are time blocked, hard breaks for commercials, for advertisers, other stories you're trying to fit in, other matches. And all of that has to be changed now on the fly. You're exactly right. My mistake. I misspoke. 14 minutes long.
Yeah. Bad. And here's the thing. Okay, great. After the fact, did a great rating, but the effect that it had on the rest of the television show was horrendous, because now you're having 2 and 3 minute segments, and matches are getting cut and things are getting cut. Essentially, they went 2 segments over. And that is probably one of my, pet peeves a lot of times with the writers. Russo didn't care. He didn't have to rewrite it, and he didn't have to fix it. It was, well, it was great, bro. No, it really wasn't great. And the after effect that it has on the rest of the show and other talent are pissed off, and you're live. So there's only so much you can do. So, yeah, I was pissed off at Rock. I was pissed off at Mick. I was pissed off at everybody, because I just didn't think it was good. I didn't think that, it was disrespectful to the rest of the talent on the show. It was disrespectful to those of us that had to fix it. It's like, okay, great. I just write it, and they can go out and do whatever the hell they want. But then everything else, it screws everything else up down the line. And that's when oh, well, not my fault. I don't have to fix it. Well, fuck you. Somebody does. So I thought it was very disrespectful, and I just didn't think and plus it wasn't good. My opinion. Sure, there's millions that loved it.
It was fucking terrible. Go watch it again today, tomorrow.
No, I will never watch it.
Not you, everybody listening.
I don't have that much time, Conrad. I could be sleeping.
Shit's true. Has the dream water kicked in yet?
I haven't taken it.
Good.
You told me not to.
Oh, you never listen to me. Not like you're listening to me now.
That's all I do, man.
That takes us.
You, whatever you need.
Sure. Let's keep it moving here and let's talk about what's next. The October 4th Raw, we see The Rock pin Jericho with the people's elbow. Fast forward a little bit. He's going to team up with Mankind to win the tag titles for the third and final time after beating the New Age Outlaws on the October 12th SmackDown. They lose them to the Hollies on October 18th. You know, this is the era where belts are changing hands on a somewhat weekly basis.
Fucking all over the place.
But every time Rock and Mankind had the tag belts, 3 times, by the way, very brief, short reigns. Is it just because Russo felt like this Crash TV? You know, they won't call it, bro. Is that sort of the thinking? It's not like there's okay.
Not really a lot of rhyme or reason to it. Bro, the Hollies, they'll think it's a squash.
Yeah.
And that kind of shit. Which they sure as hell didn't think that.
Well, from there, oh, wait a minute. Let's talk about that. I just realized what happened here. Bob Holly is going to help beat The Rock and Mankind in the same match. Was that his idea?
Bob Holly's idea? I got an idea. How about I take the title?
And then what?
I beat everybody.
From now, but let's also mention what's next here. It's Armageddon. December 12th, Rock and Sock Connection reunited to challenge the New Age Outlaws for the tag titles. It's Rock and Mankind going over 16 minutes and 28 seconds. Meltzer would say it's a decent match with a weak finish. The fans were incredibly hot for Rock, as they always are. At one point, Rock pulled Gunn's shirt over his head and pounced on him. And fast forward, and we know what's coming. Rock's going to start pounding on Snow, and Gunn hits Mankind with the ring bell, but he kicks out of the pin for the near fall. Gunn does a pile driver on Mankind for another near fall. Mankind gets the hot tag to the Rock, who uses the rock bottom on Billy Gunn. Al Snow interferes for the DQ. Mankind and Snow brawled after the match, and Rock uses the rock bottom on both Dog and Snow. So it's a DQ win, and that brings 1999 to a close for The Rock. Let's get to Valentine's Day Massacre. It goes down a couple weeks after, February 14th, Memphis, Tennessee. Mankind and Rock are going to wrestle in a last man standing match. Mankind retains, presumably, going to a no contest here in 21 minutes and 54 seconds. 3 3/4 stars. Meltzer would write, it appeared neither would beat the 10 count, but both staggered up, simultaneously delivered chair shots, and both went down for the 10 count. And the fans hated the finish, booing heavily. He says they tried to sell the brutality of it with both going out on stretchers and being taken away in twin ambulances. They need to emphasize more on TV to their audience that nobody cares about winning and losing, and get these poor souls in Memphis who didn't want a non-finish, who just don't get it. Still, you can't fault the work in this match. They were pulling out all the stops. They're working really, really hard here. I don't think they ever had a bad match, but I could see on pay-per-view where fans were upset with a non-finish, but it is a creative finish. Double chair shot winds up in double ambulances. What'd you think?
Hindsight being 2020, I don't know. Look, sometimes you have to do finishes that will further a story. And I don't know that the majority, the vocal minority, will hate it. The people that read things from Northern California will hate it. But I don't think that they're not the majority. They're a very vocal minority that love to be heard by those that also like to be heard. So it's a chapter in a book. Not every chapter has a definitive finish and end. Some of it is a hook to take you to the next chapter.
But it feels like there's been a lot of chapters to this book, and it's even called Last Man Standing. It does feel like there must be a winner, but there's not. But let's move on.
That's because no one could stand.
Okay.
Impossible.
What everybody remembers about that pay-per-view is not necessarily this, but it's the fact that the Big Show is going to debut in a big way and interfering Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon in a cage. By the way, the next night on Raw, Mankind and Rock have another rematch, because fucking why not? Except this time it's a ladder match. And now Big Show's here. So he's going to come down, choke slam Mankind, and Rock grabs the belt. We should mention that Raw does a 5.9 rating and an 8.7 share. Nitro gets thumped. It only does a 3.9, but this is the highest rating, like in this era, so far. I mean, when you talk about combining them. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.